You've got 30 days to get rid of those disease-ridden chickens or we'll have the sheriff drag you and your little farm right off this street. I'm standing on the porch of my grandfather's suburban home that's been in our family since 1968 staring at this woman who rolled into Harmony Grove Estates 6 months ago, and now acts like she owns every blade of grass. Brenda Kensington grips her clipboard like it's a loaded weapon, her bleached blonde helmet of hair not moving an inch in the Texas breeze while her vanilla perfume tries to murder the honest smell of fresh hay and honest living. This isn't about a couple of hens. This is about the corner lot every developer in the county has been circling like vultures because Brenda here smells commission money and thinks I'm the pushover who'll just roll over. Ma'am, I say, keeping my voice even, you do realize this is my private property, right? Her laugh could curdle milk. Not for long, sweetie. What would you do if some clipboard queen tried to erase your family's legacy? Drop a comment with your city, I bet your HOA has horror stories too. Little did Brenda know she just kicked off a war with the guy who spent 15 years writing the federal rules that govern HOAs like hers. Let me back up before the feathers really fly. My name is Ryan Caldwell, and 6 months ago, I was living the Washington Dream, senior policy advisor at HUD, drafting the very regulations that keep homeowner associations from turning into mini dictatorships. 15 years of congressional hearings, endless coffee, and enough red tape to wrap the Capitol twice. Then Grandpa passed and left me this house on the edge of Harmony Grove, the last original lot before the McMansions sprouted like weeds. 2 acres of real Texas dirt with the backyard coop Grandpa built in '72. So we could have fresh eggs and a garden that actually grew something besides HOA-approved petunias. I traded my government cubicle for morning coffee on a porch where the sunrise hits the chicken wire just right, and the only traffic jam is when the hens argue over who gets the best scratch. Harmony Grove looked peaceful on the surface, white picket fences, and kids on bikes until Brenda showed up. Age 53, former Dallas real estate shark who bought the biggest McMansion on the block for $850,000. And within a week had nominated herself for HOA president. Within a month she was president. Within 2 months she was rewriting covenants like she was God with a highlighter. Picture a woman whose smile screams, "I need to speak to the manager of the universe," always in pastel yoga pants that cost more than my truck payment, clutching that damn clipboard like it grants superpowers. Her first violation notice showed up taped to my door 3 months after I moved back. Unauthorized agricultural operations creating visual and olfactory nuisances that depress property values. Apparently the gentle cluck of 6 hens and the sight of tomato vines were more offensive than Brenda's personality, and that's saying something. Never mind that Grandpa's chickens had been here when her subdivision was still prairie, and the only smell anybody complained about was her Bath and Body Works explosion. First I laughed it off. City girl doesn't understand small-town Texas, right? One polite conversation over sweet tea would fix it. That was mistake number 1. Brenda showed up the next week with her cousin Todd from code enforcement, both armed with cameras and attitudes. They photographed everything: my compost bin, Grandpa's 1978 tractor, even the hens who gave them the side eye like they knew trouble when they saw it. She kept muttering about researching enforcement options, and that's when the light bulb went off. This wasn't confusion. This was a shakedown, and Brenda Kensington had just picked the wrong backyard farmer. 2 days later a thick envelope appeared on my door. Inside was the most official-looking cease and desist I'd seen outside a federal courtroom. Demanded immediate removal of all livestock, citing health hazards, environmental risks, and aesthetic violations. She'd even attached a doctored plat map claiming my backyard somehow fell under HOA jurisdiction. The audacity was almost admirable. The notice ordered me to an emergency compliance hearing at the community center Thursday night at 7 right when normal people eat dinner. Brenda knew exactly what she was doing. Inconvenience is psychological warfare. I showed up anyway because sometimes you have to see how deep the crazy runs. The community center smelled like cheap air freshener and old grudges. Brenda had the board seated behind a long table like a firing squad, one metal folding chair waiting for me. She wore a navy blazer that probably cost more than my feed bill, and had a PowerPoint titled Agricultural Nuisances and Community Standards, complete with dramatic close-ups of my coop labeled Biohazard Zone, and my tomatoes called Invasive Species. The coffee tasted like it was brewed during the Reagan administration. Mr. Caldwell, Brenda announced, voice dripping fake concern. You've been called here to address serious covenant violations. I looked around at the board, mostly transplants who moved here for small-town charm, then wanted to bleach it sterile. Ma'am, I said, settling into that miserable chair. I'd like to see a copy of those covenants you keep citing. The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. Brenda's smile flickered. Those documents require legal review before distribution, she stammered, shuffling papers. We can't just hand proprietary information to outsiders. Outsiders on land my family owned before most of these people knew Texas existed. Time for the counter. I slid my old HUD business card across the table like I was dealing poker. Well, Brenda, I spent 15 years writing federal HOA regulations at HUD. Maybe I can help you navigate those legal complexities. You could have heard a pin drop in a hurricane. Half the board suddenly found their shoes fascinating, and Brenda's face went through more colors than a malfunctioning traffic light. Most people don't know HOAs must provide governing documents to any affected owner, upon request, federal law under the Fair Housing Act. Refusing is evidence of bad faith. A nervous woman in the back, Beverly Patel, a third-grade teacher, raised her hand. Brenda, didn't you say Mr. Caldwell was just some local guy with chickens? Brenda's laugh could shatter glass. Anyone can print business cards these days, Beverly, but the damage was done. These weren't evil people just lied to, and now they were wondering what else their fearless leader had omitted. The meeting ended with Brenda promising documentation after consultation. Translation: she was Googling how to cover her tracks. As everyone filed out, Beverly approached me in the parking lot, crickets singing like they knew secrets. Mr. Caldwell, she whispered, glancing around. Brenda's been lying about everything: your chickens, the legal authority, even the money. I think she's planning something that could destroy this whole neighborhood. And that's how I found my first ally in what was about to become the HOA war of the decade. Brenda didn't slow down. If anything, my little credential drop lit a fire under her Lululemon. Within a week, the bureaucratic blitzkrieg began, death by 1,000 pink violation slips. Monday, her cousin Todd rolled up with county code enforcement claiming unpermitted structures. Every coop, post, and fence built since 1968 suddenly needed permits that burned in Grandpa's shed fire 20 years ago. Tuesday, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality showed up anonymous tip about groundwater contamination from my 6 hens. The inspector spent 3 hours sampling soil and water, then left shaking his head, muttering about the dumbest complaint I've ever seen. Wednesday, the state AG department arrived to check for diseased poultry. The vet took one look at my glossy, healthy girls and asked if this was a prank. My hens were healthier than half the board members. The strategy was clear: drown me in fees, inspections, and time until selling looked cheaper than fighting. I'd seen this playbook at HUD: unscrupulous developers clearing out problem owners. Thursday afternoon, Beverly's Honda fishtailed into my driveway. She was shaking like a leaf, clutching a coffee cup and a banker's box. I haven't slept in days, she said, sitting on my porch steps while my rooster crowed like backup. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't tell you the truth. She brought receipts, text messages, bank statements, a paper trail uglier than Brenda's roots. The whole chicken crusade wasn't about community standards. It was about cold cash. Vista Lux Homes, the developer planning Phase 2 townhomes, had been feeding Brenda inside info for months. They wanted my corner lot for luxury condos, and Brenda was promised a $75,000 finder's fee plus first pick of premium units if she forced me out. The entire nuisance campaign was theater to hide legal theft. But the real bombshell was in the HOA formation papers she smuggled out. As I read, I nearly choked on my coffee. Back at HUD, I'd reviewed thousands of these. Brenda's HOA had skipped every required step: no state filing, no recorded covenants, no legal authority whatsoever. They were operating with the legitimacy of a lemonade stand. Beverly, I said gently, your HOA was never legally formed. Everything you've done has zero standing. The color drained from her face. You mean Brenda's been running a con and we've all been helping? Exactly. And that evening the vet called back. Mr. Caldwell, I did some digging. Brenda has filed identical livestock complaints in 3 other counties, always targeting rural adjacent properties near new developments, always fabricated. My blood ran cold. Brenda wasn't a midlife power trip. She was running a multi-county scam collecting kickbacks for stealing family land one fake violation at a time. That night I sat on Grandpa's porch, coyotes yipping in the distance, chickens settling in their coop, peaceful sounds reminding me exactly why this fight mattered. This wasn't just about saving my hens anymore. Brenda had turned HOA bullying into a business model, and there was no telling how many other families she'd already crushed. Time to make some calls to my old HUD buddies. If Brenda wanted federal-level game, she was about to learn why you never start a war with the guy who wrote the rule book. Brenda must have felt the walls tightening because her next move was straight from the tyrant playbook: when facts fail, manufacture a crisis. Friday morning I woke to Channel 7 news vans parked on my lawn, satellite dish blocking the driveway. The reporter, perfectly coiffed and clearly never near actual livestock, was already filming. I'm standing outside a controversial backyard operation that neighbors say is endangering children with toxic fumes and disease. I walked out with black coffee strong enough to wake the dead and watched Brenda orchestrate her circus. She'd gathered a dozen residents, including kids, wearing surgical masks like my hens were coughing up anthrax. The morning smelled like hay and honest dirt, but Brenda waved her arms like she was describing Chernobyl. This illegal poultry setup has been polluting our groundwater for months, she told the camera, voice thick with practiced concern. We've begged Mr. Caldwell to relocate, but he refuses to respect community standards. The reporter, bless her, actually did journalism. While Brenda posed with masked toddlers, the crew interviewed real neighbors. Old Mr. Ramirez, whose family had known Grandpa since the 70s, didn't hold back. That woman's been trying to run Ryan off his land since day one. The Caldwells have been good neighbors for 50 years, and now some transplant thinks she can rewrite history. Mrs. Patel, the feed store owner, pointed out the obvious. Ryan buys everything local. His hens are healthier than my grandkids, and if there were real problems, don't you think we'd know? By noon, Brenda's media stunt was exploding in her face. The story that aired wasn't toxic chickens, it was real estate agent manipulates neighbors for land grab. But I wasn't content to let her credibility die quietly. It was time to go on offense. That weekend I called my old HUD network. 15 years of writing housing policy buys you favors. By Monday I'd filed formal complaints with 3 agencies: Fair Housing Act violation for discriminating against sustainable backyard practices, the Texas Real Estate Commission for undisclosed conflicts, and the big one, the FBI Financial Crimes Division conspiracy to commit wire fraud, mail fraud, and civil rights violations under color of law. Using fake legal documents to threaten property owners isn't neighborhood drama, it's federal crime. Meanwhile, Beverly was quietly working the board. Retired teacher turned rebel, she'd shown every member the evidence and the news that their entire HOA was legally imaginary. The emergency board meeting she recorded was legendary. You could hear Brenda's voice climb octaves as members demanded answers about the missing money and the fake incorporation papers. This is a witch hunt, she screeched, unaware the only witch was the one in the navy blazer. By Tuesday, 3 board members resigned rather than risk charges, and 2 others demanded Brenda's removal. The HOA that once felt unstoppable was crumbling faster than a stale cookie. But Brenda wasn't finished. Wednesday she called the sheriff, claiming I'd threatened her in a conversation that never happened. Sheriff Ramirez, who'd known my family forever, showed up looking apologetic. Ryan, I gotta ask, but between us I think that woman's lost her marbles. I showed phone records, security footage, and Beverly's recordings. The sheriff listened for 30 seconds, then shook his head. Son, I've seen crazy, but she's in a league of her own. Keep doing what you're doing and holler if she tries anything stupider. That evening I sat on the porch, sunset turning the chicken wire gold in the air, clean and honest. Brenda had played legal intimidation, bureaucratic warfare, media spin, and now false police reports. She assumed she was bullying some clueless suburban dad. Tomorrow she'd learn what happens when you try to steal from the guy who helped write the federal rulebook on housing fraud. Saturday, Beverly arrived vibrating with fury, carrying another banker's box. Ryan, you need to see this. She dropped financial records on the kitchen table. Brenda hadn't just lied about authority and faked violations, she'd been embezzling community dues to fund her war against me. Pool funds diverted to private investigators, landscaping budgets funneled to code enforcement, even the holiday party money, raided for forged documents. Over $127,000 vanished in 8 months. Worse, her McMansion wasn't even hers. The deed sat in Vista Lux Homes' name. She was living in a developer loaner playing queen while secretly selling out the neighborhood. Beverly had saved the best for last. Hidden emails showing Brenda's pattern targeting 6 other families across Texas. Same playbook, fake violations, harassment, lowball offers once victims broke. She'd turned generational land theft into a profitable side hustle, and my 2 acres were next. What hit hardest was realizing how many grandparents' dreams had already died because they didn't know their rights. Beverly looked at me grimly. This is enough to put her away for decades. The power balance had flipped completely. Brenda thought she was harassing a pushover. Instead, she targeted the one man with federal connections, a mountain of evidence, and zero intention of backing down. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was justice for every family she'd already destroyed and protection for everyone she hadn't reached yet. Her little HOA empire was about to get regulated into oblivion. Sunday, my kitchen looked like a war room. Beverly had recruited 2 more board members, Jim the retired electrician and Maria the paralegal. Coffee cups everywhere, evidence folders spread like battle maps, the righteous anger of people who'd been lied to for months thick enough to cut. 3 objectives, I said. Stop Brenda from ruining more families, get restitution for her victims, and make sure no one ever pulls this scam here again. Jim leaned back satisfied. Tell us what you need. The plan was surgical. My HUD buddy Jim Rodriguez would file emergency injunctions to freeze HOA accounts. Beverly would document every embezzled dollar. Maria would prepare criminal referrals. My role, coordinating federal agencies without tipping Brenda that the full weight of the government was now watching. We had to let her keep digging while we built an airtight case. The RICO angle was perfect. It let prosecutors hit everyone from Brenda to the developer's mandatory asset forfeiture, meaning victims could actually get their money back. By noon, the battle plan was set. Phase 1, gather more evidence. Phase 2, simultaneous legal strikes. Phase 3, public exposure that would end Brenda's career forever. The timeline was tight, too fast, and she might destroy proof, too slow, and she might target another family. Wednesday, we'd know if Brenda was smart enough to surrender or dumb enough to fight a battle she'd already lost. Either way, her reign of clipboard terror was ending. Brenda sensed the noose tightening because Monday brought pure desperation. She'd hired a sleazy private investigator to dig dirt on my HUD years. What he found instead was 15 years of commendations and 0 scandals. Tuesday, she spread rumors I'd taken bribes during federal service. Commissioner Ruiz, who'd known Grandpa, called me laughing so hard he could barely speak. Ryan, that woman just asked if your granddad bought this land with dirty money. I told her Joe Caldwell was the most honest man in 3 counties. And if she keeps slandering dead veterans, the whole town will hear what kind of person she really is. The smell of panic was stronger than her vanilla cloud. Wednesday night, I woke to spray paint hissing near my fence. Security cameras caught everything in night vision. Brenda and an accomplice in black tagging my coop biohazard and toxic waste, while she whispered about how the photos would prove her insurance claims. She was literally creating the damage she'd been accusing me of causing. Thursday, she filed more fake police reports with transcripts of threats that sounded like rejected movie scripts. Sheriff Ramirez showed up, downloaded the vandalism footage, and just shook his head. She's committed more felonies this week than most career criminals. Filing false reports, vandalism, conspiracy. She's gonna love county jail. I asked him to hold off a few days. The feds needed her free long enough to finish the case. Inside the crumbling HOA, Thursday's emergency meeting was chaos. Brenda strode in expecting loyalty, only to face a room that finally knew the truth. She launched into another speech about escalated threats, until Jim stood and asked about the missing $127,000. Denial, deflection, then desperate attacks. Everyone was jealous of her leadership. When Maria demanded proof of legal incorporation, Brenda demanded blind trust. That's when Jim played the recording explaining the HOA had never existed legally. The board voted unanimously to dissolve the fraudulent organization and refer Brenda for prosecution. Her response, a flurry of threatening emails that were immediately forwarded to the sheriff, adding witness intimidation to her charges. She was imploding in real time, every tantrum another gift to prosecutors. Friday evening, the private investigator showed up at my porch looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, offering to flip on Brenda for immunity. She'd asked him to plant drugs or stolen goods on my property for a $10,000 search warrant. He'd recorded the whole conversation, another federal felony. That night the chickens clucked peacefully, coyotes sang, the air smelled clean. Brenda had escalated from rules to media to vandalism to outright fraud, and every move handed us more evidence. Monday morning brought her masterpiece of stupidity. 2 federal agents in cheap suits and windbreakers showed up with a forged USDA closure order demanding I remove all poultry within 24 hours or face prosecution. The paperwork looked good until you knew what real federal documents look like, which after 15 years at HUD I did. "Gentlemen," I said calmly while cameras rolled, "which statute gives USDA authority over privately owned suburban hens?" The lead actor started sweating. "Under the Federal Emergency Poultry Protection Act, there is no such act." When I offered to call my old assistant secretary, the pair bolted faster than scared rabbits. Within an hour, Brenda was posting on the neighborhood Facebook group celebrating her federal victory, with staged photos claiming property values were saved. She was bragging about a crime she just committed on camera. That afternoon, Beverly brought recordings from the emergency HOA meeting where Brenda presented the fake raid as proof of her genius. "She actually believes her own lies now," Beverly said. "She's telling everyone she's been working undercover with Washington for months." The footage was devastating. Brenda inventing meetings with senators, describing non-existent briefings, every word another fraud count. But the real disaster came that evening when Brenda arrived with her cousin and 2 goons to assist with the federal livestock removal. My cameras caught her ordering them to open the coop gates and shoo the hens into the street. "Help the federal process along," she hissed. That's when Sheriff Ramirez rolled up with backup. "Brenda Kensington, you're under arrest for conspiracy, livestock theft, impersonating federal officers, and a growing list of felonies." The handcuffs clicked like sweet music. She screamed about government conspiracies even as they read her rights, still convinced her fantasy was real. Tuesday evening she called a town hall victory meeting at the community center packed with residents, media, and undercover federal agents. Brenda took the stage in her best power suit, ready to gloat. "Through my leadership, federal intervention has resolved the backyard threat." Beverly stood first. "Brenda, why were you arrested yesterday for fraud?" The room froze. Then I walked forward. "Would you like to explain your $75,000 finder's fee with Vista Lux Homes?" Her face went white. I took the mic and clicked to the real slideshow: bank records, embezzlement, emails, vandalism, footage, the full criminal enterprise. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Special Agent Martinez stood. "Brenda Kensington, you're under arrest for wire fraud, mail fraud, civil rights violations, and operating a criminal enterprise under RICO." Flashbulbs popped. Residents cheered as she was let out in cuffs, screaming about conspiracies. Agent Martinez turned to the crowd. "For the record, Mr. Caldwell's property passed every inspection. Kensington has been under federal investigation for systematic HOA fraud across multiple counties. 6 months later, I'm back on Grandpa's porch watching sunrise paint the coop gold. Brenda is serving 12 to 18 years after pleading guilty to everything from embezzlement to RICO. Federal forfeiture recovered over $2 million returned to victims. Vista Lux Homes lost $200 million contracts and filed bankruptcy. The neighborhood formed a real HOA with proper papers, Beverly as president. Property values actually rose once people stopped fearing clipboard tyrants. I used my settlement to start the Caldwell HOA Defense Foundation, helping 30 families already fight similar scams. Success rate 100%. We teach rights, proper governance, and how to spot fraud early. Dear Patel, the vet, brings students to study sustainable suburban farming. Sheriff Ramirez stops for coffee, still laughing about Brenda's self-destruction. The state even passed the Rural and Suburban Family Protection Act, strengthening penalties for HOA scams, legislation I helped draft. Karen's greed accidentally made Texas safer for every family. The irony is perfect. Brenda thought she was bullying a quiet chicken guy who didn't know his rights. Instead, she attacked the man who wrote the federal playbook that buried her. Bullies always forget to check who they're targeting. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment. Was Brenda the real victim of overzealous rules, or was I the true rule breaker for fighting back with every legal tool I had? Who was actually in the wrong here, the HOA president protecting standards, or the homeowner protecting his family's legacy? Tell me below, and if you're dealing with your own HOA nightmare, remember knowledge is the best weapon. Hit subscribe for more stories where the clipboard queens finally get what they deserve. Until next time, this is Ryan Caldwell reminding you some fights are worth every cluck.